Morena, no mai.
No public forum.
Here she is.
Yeah.
Councillors, we're going to move straight into our presentations. Just want to mihi to everyone, the presenters that have arrived. Tēnā koutou katoa, welcome to the Komiti Māori hui of the 10th of June. Nō reira, no mai. Our first presentation this morning, I can see Kate in the audience. Kate, hara mai, Kate? So we've got the presentation down as virtual anchors and high tide roofs. I think we've made a mistake. I think, Kate, this morning you're talking on the high tide roofs, am I correct? Only, yeah. Okay. Welcome, Kate. I'll hand over to you so you can start. Thank you.
Morena, thanks very much for having me this morning. So I'm Kate Graham. I'm from the Tauranga branch of Forest and Bird, and I'm also the national president of the organisation of Forest and Bird. So Forest and Bird is New Zealand's conservation organisation that does advocacy for our special places and species that live within Aotearoa. And we've got local branches around the country. There's about 60 of them, and they do local advocacy for our Indigenous species. Today, I just wanted to talk to Komiti Māori about Tauranga Moana and high tide bird roosts. And so Forest and Bird are just one of the many groups of people, iwi, and individuals and other community groups who care about all of these special birds that live within Tauranga Moana. And we are really concerned about their future. So Tauranga Moana in the past has been a significant home for these species, and they have lived here in their thousands and thousands. Like most of our wildlife, they're now drastically reduced, but it's still a very special and important place for these different species. So just to quickly talk about, I'm talking about shorebirds and waders, which use Tauranga Moana as roosts. There's ones that are resident all year round, which are things like the dotterel and the oystercatcher, terns and gulls. And then there are summer northern hemisphere migratory waders that come. There's over 30 species, and they come from huge distances for the summer to feed and rest before they return to Siberia and Alaska for the northern summer. And then the third group is South Island migratory waders that come up here, the wrybill and the banded dotterel. So all of these birds, they are threatened with extinction. And that's from a variety of pressures around here. So what these birds need is, if I just flip to the next slide, please. Thank you. What these birds need is they need a safe place to rest at any time. And so that means when the tide is high, when there's a big storm, they need to be able to actually have a place that they can rest undisturbed and then go back and feed enough so that they can put on enough weight to then fly all those thousands and thousands of kilometres back to Siberia and Alaska. And these, with climate change, with activities within our harbour, these safe places are being threatened and diminished. So and I just put up a quote from John Heafy, who's the local bird expert from Te Papa Atawhai. Without habitat, we have nothing. And that just says, if we don't have habitat, then those birds will become extinct from our harbour, and we will lose that special feature. And so you'll see in the photo there, that's Panipani Point on Matakana Island in 1998, great big sand spit coming out there, which was a really important place for dotterel. So I'll just go to the next slide, please. So they've got a couple of requirements. They need close to their feeding grounds, and they need to be safe from disturbance, and dry in all weathers. So climate change and activities within the harbour are having a huge impact on these places. And I've given the example of Panipani Point here. So on the right of the two photos is Mawao, and on the left is Panipani Point. And so in that first, the writings come off it, but I think it was 1998, the one on the top one, where you can see the big expanse of sand spit there. So that was the largest breeding site for dotterel in the world. So it had 12 breeding pairs on that Panipani Point. Below it is a more recent one, which I think was 2024, thank you. And it shows how Panipani Point has completely disappeared. So that roosting site has gone. And if you walk around Mawao at the moment, you can see the pine trees are actually falling off into the harbour entrance there. So if we just go to the next slide. Yes, please do interrupt if you've got questions.
Thanks, Kate. Good to see you again. Why? Is that due to widening of the channel or dredging, man-made or natural?
So the coastal environment is an incredibly dynamic environment, so it's always hard to pinpoint things, but undoubtedly dredging of the channel has absolutely exacerbated that Panipani Point, and it caused huge erosion back there. Yeah.
Just to follow on from that question, have the proliferation of mangroves around the harbour, has that also taken away high tide roosts for some birds?
No, it hasn't. And I would argue actually for the Tinopai one, which I'll talk about later in Amokuroa, that actually that's probably exacerbated to the erosion of that roost site. So, sometimes with the increase in sediment in mangroves, they can encroach on roosts, but not in this case, no. So they actually also bind together the sand areas and create protections. But when you take them away, you cause erosion around things as well. So it can actually, the removal of mangroves can actually undermine the roost.
That's great, thank you. And just one more follow-up, if I may. I was interested in reading about the major erosion of sand dunes in a Hopi Beach, and a comment was made from our staff that we were reaching the end of a 40-year cycle in accretion of of the coastal areas. So have you got a longer term period which shows that perhaps there might be some building back up again in some areas if we are reaching the end of the 40-year period? Is it likely to then start building back up again? Is that a possibility from your knowledge of the history of Tauranga Moana?
I'm not really, I couldn't really comment on that, but when we are interfering with our activities and dredging and things like that, we are changing the fundamental dynamics of things. So we can't, looking historically won't actually say things are going to come back again because we have interfered so much in the coastal processes. And I think the key point with the roosts too is once they're gone, the birds go and they don't come back. So there's a window in time to retain species, and then if you miss that, they are gone. If we just keep on going through the slides. Right, so I've got, yep. So this, again, this is going back to the kind of ongoing loss that we are seeing. So all of those yellow dots were all of the roost sites that have existed in the Tauranga Moana. And the only ones that remain are the 4 that have the boxes around them. So there's Waikarua right at the point of Matakana opposite the Bowen Town entrance. It's a bit higher than it's shown on that. And then we have Tahuna Manu, which is off Matakana. There's Tinopai off Mokoroa. And then there is the Sulphur Point, where there is a sand pile area that has been a very important roost. And the harbour's divided up into sort of northern and southern part of the harbour. At the moment, perhaps I'll go on to the Sulphur Point, and then we might flip back to this. So those are the 4 important roost sites that we've got in the harbour. If we just go on to the next slide, this has photos of the Sulphur Point sand pile in the 1990s. So prior to the sulphur factory and the reclamation commencing, this was known as Te Mātau, or the hook, and it was known amongst mana whenua as the key high tide roost for Tauranga Moana, with thousands of birds present. And so 9,000 plus godwits would roost on that Sulphur Point area. So I've talked about the pressure of increased disturbance and loss of safe roosts, where we want to do things like recreate and do economic activities. So this working port site is just a key example of this. So that the sand pile there has, whilst the port has expanded, there's been a big sand pile area there that was that has been worked and continued to be used as a roost by the birds. So in the past, when they couldn't use the sand pile there, when it was being worked, they would go to sort of less optimal sites like the cargo sheds and things like that. That's now been bulldozed, that's gone. Panipani Point was an alternative, that's now gone. So they are being squeezed. And, we've got this fantastic aspiration of Matakana iwi to have a predator-free Matakana, but Panipani's gone, and to keep those birds there, we need a safe home in the southern part of the harbour. And this is the only point in the southern half of the harbour that is available for the birds all year round and in all weathers. So at the moment, the sand pile has been reduced. It was originally 1.6 hectares. It's now been reduced to just half a hectare, and it's surrounded by an operating container wharf. So it's currently in a dual use, and it's being used for sand deposition and a storage site for beach replenishment around the Tauranga city. But this is just totally incompatible, having a working sand pile with a functioning high tide roost, particularly given it's been so significantly reduced. So that sand pile needs to be reserved for the birds. So this has been debated through the referral process, and it's now in the fast track process. So I'd just really like to recognise iwi who have been advocating for the manu through this process. So the Environment Court judge recommended that it be returned to the bigger extent and reserved, but the port has opposed this. We see reserving this piece of sand is just a key part of the port doing their business. It's just a key cost of doing business in the sensitive environment where they have displaced these. So for the Regional Council has a significant investment in the port, and it's the regional regulator. So we would ask Council to support the efforts of iwi and advocate in support of that sand pile being reserved. That fast track application has now been lodged, and within that application, the shorebirds have not been properly provided for in the application, which enables it to still be worked. So it really must be reserved for the birds, and we would ask the Council to really stand strong on that. So if I just go on to the next slide. Did anyone have any questions before I move on to these other ones off the porch?
Kate, I haven't got a question, but we do have delegates from Matakana in the house, so I'm sure they will comment in their next presentation, which will be of value for us to hear around this table too. So we do have a delegation from Matakana who will follow on, but thank you. But I do have one question, and excuse my ignorance. You said that one of the biggest threats is extinction. So what happens in the ecosystem here then if that occurs, if we don't have them coming? Because you're saying then that migration pattern is disturbed and we don't get them anymore.
Well, I guess I would say we actually don't really know. So we think we do know a lot, but often we don't know much about natural systems. And, ecosystems is a closed system. If you take out any element of it, it changes things and it has a ripple on effect for different things. So it can affect fish, it can affect, all sorts of things that exist within ecosystems. And I think the key thing is that they are an important feature of our harbour, and we have a responsibility to make sure they do not go extinct.
Donaldson and
Thank you.
Councillor
Sulphur
McMillan.
Point is a reclaimed area. So before Sulphur Point was there, where did the birds go? And isn't it true that they will find another home? You say they're lost forever, but in actual fact, these birds, the ones that are migrating down from the north, are you trying to tell me they're not going to come to New Zealand anymore?
Yeah, I am. So you're absolutely right that they might not, over the time they might have been all through the harbour. So we saw that previous map, which had all the other areas that they used to roost. So before Sulphur Point became a working port and was extended, they would have had all these other sites to go and roost and rest. But their home is where we like to live, recreate, and do commercial activities. So they have been displaced all throughout Aotearoa. So the last place they really want to be is surrounded even on a protected sand pile by a working port. But that is just a reflection of the desperation of the situation for our wildlife. There are no safe places for them to go where they're not disturbed.
The other consideration is sea level rise, and Sulphur Point is one of only 3 sites within actually most of the east coast that are rising they're sinking, should I say. The landmass is sinking using satellite telemetry. This is NZ Sea Rise research. So Sulphur Point is actually sinking. If nothing's done with human intervention, Sulphur Point, that what was the roost there would probably disappear anyway. So human interference has actually made the roost available, and human interference will continue to protect that area because it is sinking. It's there's only Sulphur Point, the Judea area, and the Fraser Cove swamp area. Those are the only 3 points where the level of the land is declining. It's the rest of the Bay of Plenty is actually the land, and it's through the tectonic plates is rising. Not so the sea level is actually not rising. It's negative along there.
And I think you're right. Your point that human interference has caused this problem, and human interference will have to solve it. So we actually have to actively do something to address it. Yeah.
What I was saying is human intervention has helped the problem because it wasn't there before. It's given them a roost, and so that's been beneficial for them, I would have said, not the other way around.
I'm not quite sure I'd agree, but anyway.
Well, kia ora, thank you, Kate, and great to have you here. And also when you
came to present to Tauranga Moana Advisory Group as well. I mean, we are in a crisis, and you know, it's absolutely plain with your presentation and the research that's been done and the work that DOC are doing, that these birds are threatened with extinction. That is our last call. And without habitat, we have nothing. And you've outlined on that map what the situation we're in. So this is a crisis. And what I want to unpack is, what can we do with the port's opposition to protect that sand pile? Because it can't go on. You can't have that level of activity, that commercial activity, and expect these very sensitive breeding grounds to just suck it up. And then, okay, if it doesn't work, it's gone. We did have a presentation in Monitoring and Ops about nature-based solutions, and one of them was, they all talked about man-made nature solutions, such as artificial roosts. And I know from conversations I've had with bird experts that you can put an artificial roost somewhere, but the birds may not. So it is it's a shot in the dark. It's good to have, but we also need to preserve the roost that they have chosen currently, because if we just say, let's wipe away all of that and then just whack some fake ones up and cross our fingers that they might roost there, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that that may or may not work. So it's great to have them additionally, but we have to protect what is remaining, otherwise they're gone. And these are our Tonga species, and this is a crisis. So I suppose what I want to unpack, Chair, is what can we do about this situation with the Sulphur Point sand pile?
Is that a question to me, or was it a question to
The
Kate?
question to this
To
committee.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Doug. Can we put pressure on the Port of Tauranga to do something about this? That's my question. With the Sulphur Point sand pile.
Oh, sorry. I could see Doug's going to. Are you okay for Doug to go? Yes.
Sorry, Chair. So as the presenter's already said, the Sulphur Point sand pile was part of the considerations for the Environment Court consideration for the extension of the container terminal. That has now moved to where the Environment Court actions have been withdrawn in the interests of the fast track process. The outcome from that fast track process will be determined in due course. But there's other actions taking place that may well mean that the decisions in terms of that hearing may or may not be delayed. Sounds a bit obtuse, doesn't it? But there's bigger issues at play here than just the sand pile. And I'm not too sure whether the presenter realises the position that's just been lodged in the High Court regarding fast track process by the collective of the hapu.
No, I'm not. So perhaps should we park that for the moment, apart from just perhaps underlining that actually that sand pile is a really important piece of securing the roosts. And so if the Regional Council has any opportunity to, as one of the, as a regulator and things, to actually support that reservation of that, then that is a really critical thing that we would like to see.
So the Regional Council is part of the consenting process, and as such, any submission that the regional council makes needs to be to the hearing, where that sits. As a consenting authority, which has passed that responsibility on to the court through the consenting process, I'd suggest it's not up to the regional council to adopt a firm position either way. We're the regulator. We're to ensure that there's been a fair hearing given to both applicants and to those who want to oppose the decision.
Oh, no, it's just that the way that the consenting process is set up, it's set up such that politicians do not have sway. We have delegated authority that's been provided to our staff to make reports and to feed into any process. As Doug said, this has been passed on to the EPA as a fast track program now. But even if it was being considered in-house, politicians, it's not appropriate for us to put pressure on our staff to subvert the process of the RMA. It's called a conflict of interest.
And I certainly wasn't suggesting that, but I think it is important that the regional councillors also ensure that actually the regional councillors' obligation as a consenting authority are properly being met, and that actually the interests of the environment and tangata whenua are also balanced against economic interests. So we can probably, Chair, are you happy to move on from that one now?
It's very quick. Tēnā koe mō tō whakāturanga kia mātou e te iwi, tēnā koutou. Yeah, I'm just sort of looking at these yellow dots, 24 of them, of which you only got 4 left. And these birds are a lot smarter than us. They'll leave. That seems to be the situation if we don't do anything about it. They'll leave and find some other place to go. And that's the sad news, you know. And I think I wish you well. That's all I really wanted to do in your journeys ahead, because this is a tough one. You know, what you're facing in the context of our role as regional council, I like to think that we can try and do as much as we can do to support you as best we can. But because it's a tough one to try and do it on your own.
Thank you. And just to be clear, they won't move on because there are no places to move on to, and so actually they will die. They will, you know, as a species, we will lose them from the tauranga moana. So that is what we are.
That's what I mean, that they might not reside at tauranga moana, they might find some other place. But even then it's difficult wherever they go, right?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing here is replicated all across Aotearoa and of course internationally for the migratory species as well. But the next 2 slides that we have up here, the 2 photos here, if we'll just go back to that one. So in terms of some action that the council could take or support investigating is, so 2 of those 4 roosts, the Tinopai roost at Amakoroa and the Tahuna Manu roost off Matakana Island. And those are big sandspit areas that the birds have been able to roost on in all tides and all weathers in the past. Tahuna Manu has been severely eroded on Matakana, and Tinopai now is underwater in extreme high tides and when it's stormy. So there is the opportunity to look at replenishing these roosts and retaining them as high tide roosts for the birds. And so this is what I have spoke to TMAG about, and TMAG was supportive of, was looking at rehabilitating those roosts with sand so that they can be secured as safe areas for the birds. And I think, again, that was the overriding theme that came out of TMAG too, was we know we've got plenty of information about all the issues that are facing tauranga moana, but the real question is, what are we going to do about it? And here is some options where actually action can be taken. It needs the resources of the regional council to investigate how this could be done, whether it needs any particular consenting process of that. So my ask for Komiti Māori is, will they commit to resourcing some work within the council to go and investigate rehabilitating these two roost areas, and also a longer term plan for how we would future-proof high tide bird roosts within Tauranga Moana.
Thank you, Kate. I'm just getting some technical advice on the request that's been made. So basically, we can't make a decision on what you're asking today. It hasn't come via report, but what we could do was to that we will consider what's being asked, and we can report back on that decision. The other, I guess, what I want to express to you is that there is the not issue, but requirement around talking to mana whenua around the specific areas that you've spoken to. Hence, by mentioning that Matakana is in briefs from here, but they may not want to comment at this particular meeting. They might want to go back and speak, but it will be a requirement of Komiti Māori to have a discussion too with those mana whenua that where those roosts currently sit, the area that they sit in their respective rohe. So it's a wider conversation for us to, before, I can give you an answer to what you're requesting, albeit I can't commit myself to that question today, but we can come back and have a discussion around the discussions we will have outside of this meeting. I guess the other thing I wanted to express, and you've heard the expressions of Councillor Nees and Chairman Leader around, I guess, the position that Regional Council sits in its resource consent process with the fast tracking and what's happening around the port. What I envisage occurring with this kaupapa, I think it's going to be a greater kaupapa that will be had with the hapu themselves, and it may be an avenue or the avenue as where this whole kaupapa will start to sit, and that it may actually be a better fit in a kaupapa being driven by hapu if that's the decision they want to make on this kaupapa.
Yeah, absolutely, and we would absolutely support that. Yeah. And I guess the key thing is timing is of the essence. So this is something that I've been, Forest and Bird has been talking to the council and staff about for probably 8 to 6 years. And I guess the frustration is that there has been no action on it, and we have been, it's also something that iwi have been working with the council on as well. So yeah, progress would be good.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions for Kate?
So, excuse me, Chair. Just could you just clarify what the action is that it will be looked at being investigated within the a wider hapu conversation, and can we get any sort of indication of when we would hear back about what the sort of next steps might be?
Well, we'll probably rely on our staff to have that conversation with the respective hapu that are involved in this, and then the response from that. Because what we will probably report back is not just to Komiti Māori, but also to Tauranga Advisory Group, because that requirement will also be required by Tauranga Māori Advisory Group. It's a discussion with the hapu where those roosts are located. So I guess it's it's Kataraina's team, Kataraina's workload, and where we fit that into Kataraina's workload. I don't know whether you want to make comment on that. Is that fair comment for you, Kataraina? If you can give a time frame when we can get your staff.
And we need to have a conversation and then we'll get back to you. I can't give you a time frame at this point in time, but I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for all your time today and for hearing me.
Thank you, Kate. Our next presentation is on the Te Pāpātaki model, and I see the team. Can the team come to the table, please? Kia ora, Nessie, I'll leave it in your hands to introduce your team and to start the presentation. And whatever comment you would like to make, you both may want to make comment on the previous presentation, given there's a lot happening around Panepane for you. Kia ora. You see stuff. Oh, sorry. Green for go away. All right.
Morena tātai. Ko taku ingoa ko te roretana no te maitire o matakanau. He auri au no te whānau roretana. Ko taku hapu ko ngai tau whao me ngai tama whariua. Koina.
We've got one more up there. That's Flu. Oh, Flu. That's our brew. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Tēnā koutou, ko Fleur tōku ingoa, e whanau mai e Waihāpai, e tupu aki o e ike a Māui te Wanganui e tāra o e noho ana, kei te Catalyst Group a mahi ana, o e mahi ana ko o he kai rangaho kai manaki hoki e te tāra. Kia ora everybody, thank you very much for having me. I can see that I am very huge in your room. I apologise for that. It's got to ruin your day. And I'm Fleur. I work with the Catalyst Group, and I've been working with Nessie and Uta and other members of the Ngātai Ki Māo collective over the last few years on a number of matters. And it's a great privilege to be here in support of their mahi today. Kia ora.
Okay. So we've got our presentation there, Sherry. I just wanted to say that I support a lot of what Kate was saying in that last thing and in that last presentation, and also that I'd like to answer some of those questions that were put to her on behalf of Matakana Island. There's a couple of things there, but you know, we for the Maitere love our manu, and that where Tauhina manu is at the bottom of where I live. So I do see all of that, and I do see the demise and the less money that are flying around there. So we'll work with Kate and see how we go.
I just want to add some things too. I mean, the question was posed about where the money used to be before the dredging. Well, before the dredging occurred and before Sulphur Point was put there were a lot of sandbanks out there where the money were. And the money went there because of all the food there. So one of the things about the, you know, being nested where they currently are forced to, they've got no kai there. And they're beaten with light pollution, moana pollution. They got nowhere to land, they got no kai, you know. So they're displaced, very displaced. And the other question I wanted to answer was, you know, like how Panipani has been degraded. Part of that is, yeah, it's the dredging, but it's also, you know, the global warming, that's all added to it. We're not saying that it's all within the harbour, but it's certainly, some are natural, some are very not. And so that's what I wanted to add to, even like where Tahuna Mani was, where they're looking at now, the manu are there, but the tide comes in, and so again they're displaced. So we're left with manu who are hungry, who are tired, who got, you know, they can't sleep because of the light, especially the ones that are on the town side. I just thought I'd chuck that in.
Okay, back to the kaupapa. So Te Pāpātiki is the framework that myself and my cousins from the Maitere have created. Ngā Taiki Maua, we are part of the Ngā Taiki Maua group. That name, Ngā Taiki Maua, was given from the five hapu of we represent an entity, and it's from the Maitere. So there's five of us, five hapu of Matakana Island, and myself, Uta, and three others from the other hapu. So we created Ngā Taiki Maua and also the framework. Okay. So as you can see from up there, this is what we're going to cover in the context. So the context sits with the Environment Court outputs that have come from Environment Court against the port. This is definitely all about responding to the resource consents. Yep. Thank you, Sharon. And these are the 8 key outputs that came from the Environment Court hearing back in 22, 23. It's been that long and it's just been dragging out that, now I might get a bit mixed up with the dates. But those are all of them there. I hope you guys will read them all. You want to go through them? No, we don't need to go through them. It's going to be free flowing, okay? Free flowing between us.
Yeah, Ngā Taiki Maua was inspired due to the fact that our ultimate goal was to look at the health of the harbour, because, you know, like that's one of our primary concerns here. So we started off just a few of us coming together, and then we thought, oh, actually this is about our moana, not just matakana. So we thought, well, we had a good look at it at one of our meetings, and we thought, well, it's something that the whole moana should look at. So then we thought, in order to do that, we needed to look at a different name for us. So we looked for a name, and with the kaumātua that were involved with us, we looked at the whakatauki. And so that's how we got to Ngā Taiki Maua, because all the tides in the moana meet as one at Maua. And so, and it leads to that whakatauki there in the moana. So hence the reference to Ngā Taiki Maua. So there were a few hapu that were involved right from the onset. And with our goal, our ultimate goal being the health of the harbour, we started to look at different models from around the motu, around the world really. And then we thought, well, heck, why don't we try and come up with our own? So we all sat down and looked at different things, and then we thought that we would base it on the Pātiki. Because one of the things is that every hapu in the moana has a story to tell about the Pātiki. Every marae that's got whakairo and that inside it have got a reference to Pātiki. So it just stood to reason to look at the Pātiki being the basis of a model that we could use to help with to improve the health of the harbour. Because part of that whole thing was that we, us on the Maitere, we were sick of people coming to us and asking us for our stories about the moana. The stories get taken away, they get rewritten, and they come back to us looking quite different to the information that our kaumātua kuia had given. And so this model looks at each hapu being empowered to do their own stories for their own hapu on their own state of the harbour that's in front of them, or wherever they do their things in the moana. But the ultimate goal is for everybody to be looking at the health of the harbour. So I just thought I'd chuck that in so everybody had a bit of an idea of where they come from. Because one of the things too around that, and you'll see it as we go through, that we based it on the fact that the Pātiki actually, and hope we do, learn from our own mistakes, because a Pātiki will never go back to where it's dusted up the sand before. So, so it was about doing all and incorporating all those kinds of things within this model, but people doing it for themselves. So we don't go out and tell people how to do it. It's a framework for people to actually take up if they want and work it how they want to.
But so this next slide is pretty much explaining in a lot of detail about what Uta's just finished saying. So that's really what all of this is about, the whakapapa of each hapu's area to be responsible, if you like, for what's going on in front of them, have a more hands-on approach. And then a lot of it is about and I was just having a little conversation about how within the harbour there are a whole lot of key groups within the moana, really doing a whole lot of good work, We have a whakapapa. So we, as the tangata whenua of the moana, we're asking all of our people and all our hapu to come and sit alongside each of these key groups as the whakapapa to the mahi that they're doing. It's really all around tikanga and looking after what's left of our moana. It's an open door policy. This framework is an open door. All of ourselves are kaitiaki if we choose to look that way. So the open door policy is about each hapu having their own te Pātiki framework for their main selves. Yep. You see that, it's about the flounder.
Well, one of the things I suppose is looking at the symbolism of the Pātiki. Like the symbolism of the pet in the whare, for instance, is it represents abundance, and I suppose that leads to the healthy state of whatever it is, but in this particular case, this is about the moana. Yeah, and we wanted something that our whole whānau could actually use, that we could teach our kids to use as they were coming up, and basing it on something that was actually real and tangible for all of them was a real bonus to the whole thing. I suppose one of the things is that it requires is looking at what the state of the harbor was in our queer's time. You know, like I'm sure that we all grew up with our queer actually saying that they wanted some pātiki. And can you get me the little ones so I can put them in the oven and make them paka and then, you know, so they had their own spots that they could, that people could go to. I know that we had some whānau from over Rere Kahia that used to get these over on Matakana. We know that, and that's their spot. So if they want to come and do the Pātiki model on the spot over at Matakana, because that's the spot that they deem to not be theirs, but to be where they can gather their kai from, then so be it. You know, so it's not exclusively ours. And this model allows those types of things to happen.
I suppose with that saying there too, it then appreciates the sustenance and the connectivity that each of the care groups and ourselves have to their particular area.
This slide looks a bit busy, but this is just kind of like a snapshot of how it can work if hapu sort of worked in clusters, because there's a lot of, like on the island, we could work as a cluster because there's 5 of us, but we all have our own individual spots on the island, or kaimoana, or particular kāhuna that we might want to reflect differently to the others. And we can do that within one Pātiki if we all sit down and work it out. So in there, we've collectivized a lot of the hapu and the different significant sites for around the different hapu throughout the moana.
Those are them there.
Yeah, those are all of them there. And we're at the top and the middle. I think that's us, eh? Yeah. Great. Well, why we needed it, and it was that whole thing about we were looking at the fact that we wanted to tell our own stories in our own way, in a way that was meaningful for us. We also wanted to be able to capture our own data and share that data, but actually the stories are ours. Each hapu, I mean, when I say ours, the stories belong to each hapu. It's not ours to go and get these stories. It's theirs to pull their own stories in, and theirs to share out what they want to. We might have some collective information that we need to pull together, but that's up to the hapu to actually decide how that information will be shared. It's not the job of the tool to do that. It still retains under the rangatiratanga of the hapu. Yeah. How we devised it very carefully.
Yeah. So as you can see there, it's not verses either. It's how and they're quite similar, the scientific method and the indigenous kaupapa. So they're not fighting each other. They are there just to for reference sake, if you like.
It's about validating each other. I mean, there's a need for the scientific or the Scientology in the whole mix, but there's also which is credible, but there's also the indigenous side, which is just as credible.
Yeah.
But it's actually acknowledging that the two exist and the two work hand in hand, not one that's better than the other. And so like we've just listed some of the benefits of the scientific method, but then we've also listed some of the benefits of the indigenous methods that exist.
And that's why we got flu. Hey, flu. Okay. Yes, Sherry, thank you. Ita's pretty much talked about this, when we're talking about our nannies from the past and now and into the future on what we'd like our moana to look like going forward. So this is just a little glance, for us when we were doing this exercise. It was quite a big glance and quite sad in some respects too, having to think back and remember all of those stories from your kuia and kraua, and then where we are now, and those manu are a perfect example of those. I know that for me, where I live at the island, is that I've got a whole heap of them, and because they are confused about where they're supposed to be, you can see it in them. I've got a whole heap of them on my lawn, and they're not supposed to be like that, but our where we are, it looks like it's a flight path. It's a flight path where we are. I've got my dog and my cattle trained up. Leave those fellas alone. So you can see it now, and then into the future, what you want them to look like, what you want the moana to look like, is for everybody to have a place to exist, to have a place to be, including those manu.
Nessie, I'm just. Our preference was not to interrupt the presentation, but you're giving us a lot of information, excellent information.
Right.
I'm just writing notes to Katarana beside me, and I'm going to allow councillors to put up their hand if they want to ask questions as you're going through,
Yes,
because there is a lot of information. I've just scribbled some notes to Katarana that this is like a lecture you won't get in any university. So I want the councillors the opportunity to ask questions.
Fine.
Okay. All right. I see. Jane.
Thank you. Well, I'm just so impressed with this model that you've developed. It's elegant, it's very clever. Where I'm trying to place it in my mind is how it fits with our current legislative framework, because we are a statutory body and we have to undertake our business by following our mandates that come through legislation, for example, the Resource Management Act. So the language that's coming to us through the Resource Management Act is Mātauranga Māori, which is reflecting your scientific knowledge. And then also the fact that we need to take, to recognise and accommodate the iwi management plans that have been developed across the Rohi. So how does this model fit with those concepts? Is this a mechanism or a framework by which different hapu, iwi, whoever can reflect their Mātauranga Māori? Or is it something that's going to sit underneath an iwi management plan, which is giving context and the stories around the direction on what things are important to you? Can you give me some sort of way of understanding how you see this fitting with what we have been mandated to deal with?
So this is for each hapu to determine that, Joy, this is for each hapu to determine that Matakana Island has a hapu management plan, and if the case is that, and we are currently utilising the tools within this framework to, Kate was talking about the P3 2050, some of those sort of concepts. We do a lot of restoration mahi, so it definitely fits within this model. And then so we really want the rest of our whānau, the rest of the tauranga mona whānau to be a bit more proactive, if you like. I'm not telling them how to suck eggs or anything, but just to it can be utilised for each of our little hapu entities if they so choose to.
And this whole model wrapped up is Mātauranga Māori at its highest, because it leaves the rangatira tangatira hapu and to the whānau. Yeah, I mean, when we and as we developed it, we went through our own process where we, as an example, we mapped out the state of where we are on Matakana, like looking at the different kaimoana that existed in our queer's time, where we used to go out onto the tahuna and where all the seagrass was, and pupus off the seagrass. You don't get that anymore. Actually, there's no seagrass. And if there is, there used to be seagrass that looked really healthy, really nice, swaying in the water. But today they're black, where those same seagrass used to be. And so we mapped all of those in the example that we did. Now, that if you look up there, that was Inamata, that was the before. And so now we looked at, well, what have we got today? Well, a lot of it is gone. A lot of it is dead. And why is that? Well, we don't know why, because we haven't done the full analysis of it.
Yeah.
And so, and then the next part was, and that's our huri, that's now. And then we looked at anamata, well, what do we want it to be in the future for our kids, for our moko? So this was all about making moko decisions. And so how do we get the seagrass back to normal? Can we? In today's huri, can we do that? We don't know. But we can certainly map it to find a way to do it. And we actually thought about utilising one of the tools that that's being used today. But I'll leave that to Fleur, because we worked out a way that we could measure it, map it in a meaningful to us way. But yeah, that's, and to answer your question, hopefully.
Can I just leap in there too, Arohamai, for interrupting? I think also the really great advantage of this model is it's because it's non-prescriptive, it just gives you the structure. It has a really strong ability to be applied in a number of ways to different things. So all of those things that you mentioned, the hapu management plans, etc., and other statutory obligations, it can apply as hapu like it to or not in each of those contexts, Also, for example, in specific individual consent applications, if hapu are responding, maybe they're preparing a cultural impact assessment, the Pāpātiki provides a really great structural framework in which that can inform that process as well. And equally, it can help council itself with its own obligations. For example, everyone is quite aware that the state of environment reporting, it's really useful, very key tool, but it does have some well-recognised gaps, and that's particularly around Motoranga Māori and a whole lot of elements that go into our environment that we currently don't describe well or report on. And Te Pāpātiki has the ability to help fill those gaps with the appropriate information. And has already been mentioned that those different types of information can come together. So the biophysical, the social, all the different ways that we describe, reflect, measure, report on the various elements that make up the environment as a whole.
Please.
Yeah, kia ora ngā mihi anō kia korua mō korua whakāturanga kia mātou te iwi tāpū kei te mia te kia koutou hoki. Yeah, look, it's your presentation reminds me of something that one of my own ancestors says to me, that, take the tools of the system for your bodily needs and the treasures of your ancestors to adorn your head. That's the difficulties we've had. Your model of the Pātiki is a brilliant model. It's great. It captures you. It's who you are. You make comment as you're going through about how you work with the hapu to bring them together. It is my view that, there's a view of the system that often we are homogeneous and we're not. That the mana of the hapu is very strong, but we have common interests, and the common interest is what you're expressing here, coming together to do this and to move it forward. It's a great model. The question now is how you're going to activate that model and make it work. And, all I can say is it's a difficulty we face all the time, and I wish you well to how you're going to impart that model. And the only way forward, as I can see it for a lot of our people, is to work together on that, to be strong on that. As we say, the collective is far more better, stronger than the individual. So look, I just want to wish you well, because I think you've captured everything you need to from who you are. And that's powerful in itself. Now the question is, how do we activate that? And all I can do is just wish you well with this, and whatever help that our Komiti Māori might be able to provide through by the regional council or Kei te Paitera. Great. So I'm not sort of leaving that stranded. It really is. You're on the right trail, but the trick is now, how do we actually pick that, make that happen?
So we do have a couple of tricks up our sleeve, and a lot of it is doing this. Let's just talk to each other. We've been talking with a lot of our hapu from around the Moana for a couple of months now, and on this framework, there's a date there, and we came up to the anniversary just the other week. But it's not something that. And like you say, it's about just kōrero, and going to a whole lot of hui. But if you're passionate about what you're delivering onto the table, I think everything else will take care of itself. So it's definitely being active and believing in what we're doing. So that's what we're up to. Can we go to the next one, please, Sherry? Okay, who wants to do this one?
You can do it.
What about you, Fleur? Your turn.
No, this I noticed that is it Malcolm has a hand up. Do we want to continue, or do we want to take that question?
If through the chair, Madam Chair, just a comment that since I've been on regional council, the work that has been done in Ohiwa Harbour, and we heard some feedback about that a couple of weeks ago, and some of the successes we've had over there, especially with the mussels. And can I just say to the iwi here, although I'm of Pākehā descendancy and Māori, but my father was born and bred in Katikati, and I was brought up collecting shellfish and the likes from the harbour over there, and it's definitely under a lot of threat. So that concerns me, and I'm just wondering if it's one thing that we can, and just I've just sent a message to Councillor Eadie, but taking up what Chitaru said, working with the iwi and the regional council has been a very successful program at Ohiu, and whether that would be something we need to look at for the Tauranga Harbour, because it's a lot bigger and it's under a lot more stress. So just a comment.
I'll answer that question of Councillor Campbell. This is the second time this presentation's been made. It was originally made via the Tauranga Advisory Group. So that's to you, Councillor Campbell, that is one of the conduits for us to relay information in and out for that process. But the other offering that I'm happy to discuss with Uta and Nessie and our staff is using our council chamber as a facility and having that group discussions with iwi. We've got the Zoom here on online for those hapu that aren't able to tune in for you to be presenting, because I know your capacity, you struggle with your capacity in getting out to the 26 marae that you described here.
Yep.
We could get the 26, well, we could have 10 marae sitting here and the other 12 zooming in via Zoom. So just, some of the tools that we may be able to help with you in your engagement, because, we see the value of this, and we can't solely do it through TMAG ourselves. We would have to do something similar. So, well, even if we did it through TMAG with you presenting, no, that's no good because we'll take up the seats. I just leave it at that for you to think about if you want to use the chamber to
Thank
get
you
those
very much.
messages out.
Much appreciated.
This conceptual framework is around kaitiakitanga, and in that framework, what's the word for it? Again, the whole mana of it sits with the hapu, like the kaitiaki are the ahi ka, and they are from the haukainga, they are whānau, and they then become the experts in the whole thing that feed into Pāpātiki. We asked our kaumātua back home, what's a good term that we could use to represent our kaumātua or our, to represent them. And so the kupu they came back with was paparinga, which is the cheek, like sort of like the and acknowledging the soft part of the kanohi. So that was part of that whole framework. But that framework is what we looked at as being representative of a flowing kaitiaki framework.
And I think the really cool key thing about this slide and how it sets up the conceptual framework is the connections between everyone. It really illustrates that the model Pāpātiki is an inclusive model. It's not exclusive. So everyone can use it and have a role in there and can see their place, how we all come together.
And it's set up within their own hapu. It's set up within their own hapu, not us being the kaitiaki. It's the kaitiaki that, framework that's set up within their own hapu. And Pāpātiki is about just everybody coming back in together to share information. It's not a
gatekeeping exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, Fleur, you're up.
Okay, you want me to talk to this? Cool. So we've had a really good introduction to the conceptual basis and structure of Pāpātiki, and what we're attempting to do here, and I think there's one or two slides, is just to try and illustrate how visually it's a really powerful model. So as you've seen, each hapu, each entity can have their own Pāpātiki, and they tessellate down. So within each of those, they can be looking at a whole number of things that they're interested in on different scales and levels across different times, but then they all connect back together to show a cohesive whole, and then each hapu or hapu grouping or what have you, they connect together as well. So across the moana, you're getting a much more comprehensive visual picture of what is happening. So I should say I'm a conservation scientist and an ecologist, and so I work a lot with frameworks and evaluative frameworks and models and assessment techniques, and I'm really attracted to Pāpātiki's ability to bring the different types of information together to sit alongside each other, as I mentioned earlier, across the social, biophysical, cultural realms, and so that it generates a more comprehensive picture of what is happening across a wider range of the things that are important to our communities, to hapu, te kaitiaki, etc. And so also by doing this, a big advantage, which we often see as missing from our traditional state of environment reporting and other monitoring reporting mechanisms that we're all quite familiar with, is Pāpātiki has this ability, by placing these things next to each other, to really see how those things are connected. So in the previous presentation by Kate was really helpful in that, and how the birds and the fish and the tides are all connected, but we're often not measuring or keeping an eye on all those things all at once to be able to get what's that picture, to see what's happening, and this can fill those gaps, and also can show us change across time. So there's several advantages in that. We can fill the gaps in existing monitoring. We can target responses, as Nessie and Uta was saying, what do we need to do where and how and when to get from where we are now into our future and pathways to abundance. And it can help us see how we're changing across time. So are we tracking in the right direction? Are we going in the wrong direction? But once again, none of this is prescriptive. So each hapu can be choosing what they put into their Pātiki, how they measure that, what's important to them. But when it builds up, it has the ability for us to be reporting across the board in a common way. Next slide, Nessie. Yeah, so I think I've kind of covered most of that, but maybe just to dwell a little bit more on what are the different size of the Pātiki. So we might have at the top level, we're thinking about pipi beds, and then we're dropping down into smaller levels and thinking about population size, what are the tides doing, the sediment loading, the access to those pipi beds, and then you just drop down further and further into each of those elements so that you're getting the metrics to describe how those things are tracking, where the barriers are, where the problems are that we can address to when it builds back up, so that we're getting healthy pipi beds that are providing kai that are safe to access. That's just one example.
Can I just ask a question? I think I've asked this before, but just in terms of data sovereignty or mātauranga sovereignty, is that a potential challenge with hapu to hapu sharing and potentially the collective of data sharing with statutes like us? And if there are challenges with that, is everyone comfortable with that?
There are only issues if one makes it an issue, and so each area will have their own Pātiki te Pātiki model. So and it's up to you whether you want to share. And I think when I was back in the beginning of the discussions and that we're talking about all of the key groups that we do have around the moana. So it's about all of us sharing the information for the betterment of that area that you're in. So there has to be, well, that's what I think anyway. There has to be that sharing of knowledge, that sharing of data for everybody, so that it can be a success. You know, if people want to put their handbrake on, well, things are not going to happen.
So if we look at what's up there on that slide, like one of the things like first seed, you could be looking at pipis. And so the top slide, you would map out what kind of pipis you get in your particular area. Yeah. So then you drop down to the next one, or you might need a smaller one because you don't get all that many. And the whole idea is about breaking the Pātiki down into quadrants. So you move to the second one, and then it's like the state of those pipi. Are you still getting them? Are you still getting cockles? Are you kokota, or, you know, all the different type of pipi? Some might be more, you might get more than others. And so like a tuangi, you mightn't get a tuangi anymore. So that'll be a red. So it's using those traffic light system to actually map your Pātiki. Or, and you might get kokota, you know, all of that. So that might be a green. And then you've got the yellow, the other ones. And so the next Pātiki is how do you get it from there, from the red to the green? Or can you? And so when you meet together with the other hapu, you go through that kind of data saying you're in the same state. And so collectively, you can work to an option for improving, or can it be done? Or is there a way? Or what else do we need to do? Do we need to get a scientific kind of study on it so that we can move it from red to green? You know, so that's, and like it relies a lot on being able to share that information. But when you put it down in raw data, well, people aren't willing to share raw data, but people are willing to look at how you can move it from red, you know, move it away and move it along on those, you know, to get a like a light red even. So
amber.
So, you know, and that's the idea around using Pātiki, is being able to map it in that way.
And just to add to that, Uta, so if there are concerns about sharing data for whatever reason, you can still share the narrative, just as Uta is saying. You can share what colour your Pātiki are at, or you know, the plans that you have to shift from red to green. But equally, I think that narrative sharing is really important, and in those wider conversations, including with council staff, because one of the key things, I'll take us back to the state of environment reporting that I regularly see with my work alongside hapu, is that the state of environment often lands on a conclusion that is just completely at odds of their lived reality. So it may be that things are doing okay, whereas in hapu's reality, they're certainly not. And so I think it starts that conversation about why hapu may have coloured their Pātiki red based on their observations and data that they've collected against a particular thing of interest to them, whether pipi beds, for example, versus the thresholds for poor, good, improving state of the environment that sits in the council reporting the warm Western science biophysical frameworks that we're currently using, and that mismatch can be explored and addressed as well.
So this concluding statement just says it all, and it's for each one of us in this room to take away, because that's all of us that sit around this table. You read that? Nah. Okay, so that's us then. We've got a lot of work to do. We've still got a lot of our whānau to talk to. When we were here at the TMAG one, I've got Councillor Granger. So he wants me to go to Katikati to where Malcolm comes from and then go and talk to all of those fellas, and they're really keen. So, you know, and I don't mind that. If we're going to go and talk to a whole lot of care groups, I'm up for that. It's just the way this thing's got to go.
Any questions, councillors?
Actually, I just wanted to answer some of those ones that you fellas put to Kate. Doug.
Haere tonu.
Was really the one that when Doug asked Kate about the appeals and all of the things to do with the port, because all of this stuff has been created because of our dramas with the port and environment court. So this has all been created to try and find a way, a calm way of trying to get through those channels, if you like. And then you mentioned about the appeals and things. So we are Ngā Tāke Māua.
Thank you, ladies. Once again, thank you very much. This is the second time I have seen the presentation, and I guess the reason bringing it here was to make sure all our councillors had the opportunity. TMAG, there was only a handful of us at that meeting, so thank you. I just want to say haere tonu and keep up the good mahi. Sorry, Kat's writing me notes while I'm talking to you. And so we're here if there's anything we can do to help in that process of speeding the work. I have already spoken to my apu about this, and you know, you still get the same response. Oh, another piece of work. I said, well, actually, no, it's a piece to help you with your work. So I'm sure people will be getting in contact with you too.
Yeah, we can be our own worst critics, eh? But you know, hey, that's the way this stuff goes. Oh, kia ora. Thank you for your time.
Tell me. Thank you. Councillors, if you don't mind, we've got our last presentation. I was going to take a break, but I don't really want to leave our manuhiri wait any longer. So I'm going to carry on with the next presentation, then we'll take the break, okay? Haramai Nui. I just want to welcome Nui and the team to the table. I'm not going to take up any of your time, just to welcome you all. I'm going to let you introduce the team, Nui's, so that you could. It's very good to see you back in the hot seat, Nui. Nui's been in there how many years now? 30 plus years, or did more? Nui RMU took a break, and good to see you back in the hot seat. Kei a koutou.
Tamatou.
Hamuti wera ni ho te, ka tū whakahi tonu, te tōhora tīpua, ko kopu kairoa, ka au ia ki te whenua I tōna aroha. Ka rongohia tōna hara wini wini e te iwi o Ngāti Pūkenga. Ko Pūkenga te tangata ikara matamata. E kōtiki tamatoa nā tūmataunga. A mātai hia ia I te whenua o ngā peke. I runga I te manawa o te iwi ko whetū o te rangi. Ka kautā hoi ngā piharau I roto I te awa o Waitao ki te tāhuna o Rangataua. Ka rere atu ki te pūtahi o ngā awa katoa tauranga moana, ko te awa nui. Te waharoa o te āhuru mōwai, ka tū, te maunga kai ora, ko mauau, ka kehe ho atu ki Hawaiki, i ahu mai te waka tīpuna o mā tātua. Nei rā te mana o mātou tīpuna, tihei, Māori ora. Tēnei ka mihi ki a koutou e te komiti Māori o te kaunihera nei, ki a koutou e ngā kai kaunihera me ngā kaimahi mā, kei te mi ki a koutou he poto te wā, he oi anō he poto te kōrero nei. Engari, he nui te mihi ki a koutou. Nā koutou i tuku te tono ki a mātou ki te haramai nei, ki te kōrero ki a koutou, kanohi ki te kanohi. Me mihi te rā ka tika. Ki a koutou e ngā hapu me ngā iwi, o e tahi atu o tauranga moana, e hari ana o koutou kaupapa, e hari ana ngā take ki tēnei, ki te kaunihera nei, kei te mihi ki o koutou mahi whakapaukaha i a rā. O reira, huri noa tātou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ka hoa atu te rākau ki tōku whanaunga, hene nui, kupa, he ringa raupā o tēnei ohu tai ao. Kia ora.
E te tepu. I've got to say, the last time I sat around this table was Wakavuke was still sitting at it. Anyway, tēnei taku mihi kia koutou. Nā kauwhakawā o te kaunera nei. I'm just going to take it that you've read all our attachments and presentations that we're presenting you today and move on to the next slide. That photo there was taken from our Mānanga Tai Ao, which is at Otawa Maunga. And just to give you a quick tour of our interests, this here is in our Ngāti Pūkenga settlement. And these maps are our area of interest. So we can move on to the next slide. Those are self-explanatory. Kei a koe nei manu.
Tēnā tātou, uri tēnei o te whānau haora, so Ngāti Pūkenga, Waitaha hei, Ngāti he. And we just thought it would be good to provide you with a quick snapshot of how we're organised. So the entity we're representing here today is that trust in the middle, our settlement entities over to the right, and it's got a few investment arms, and then our fisheries is tauranga specific. Ngāti Pūkenga's got 4 kāinga, so Ngāpeke is one of the 4. We've also got one at Maketu within your area of interest. And so we're one of us 3 are representing the Ohu Tai Ao, which is our little environmental rōpū at the bottom of those 5 Ohu that are listed there that are interested in different aspects of iwi development and issues.
I think it's important to just address or highlight our trustees of our runanga, myself and Manu being part of that as alternate trustees. So we have a very broad and extensive range of expertise across the board, including our very own Manu, was a pivotal part of launching one of the first companies, a Māori community-based company to be floated on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. We've got Hazel Hoppe, who is being involved with the Women's Refuge in Tauranga. I'm sure many of you have seen her name pop up. She's an integral part of looking after our wahine Māori mā and Tauranga moana. So that's just 2 examples of the broad range of experience we have in our trusteeship on the runanga. It's important too to know that like many of the kaimahi around Tauranga, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for these roles. We have our general manager who's paid, Jen in the bottom left there, who's paid for 2 work days a week. And Uncle Buddy, who gets paid on a very piecemeal rate to respond to applications for resource consent and things like that. So we're all working on a volunteer basis. We all have our day-to-day jobs. But in saying that, our ohu taio, we have a very strong support from the trustees. So if you go to the next slide, sitting under our runanga, we have 5 ohu, one of which we are here representing the ohu taio. So we each have our own respective goals. And for the ohu taio, if we keep going to the next slide, I'm not going to read that. I take it that you've read those, but I think the definitely the 3 most important points to take out of that is that protection, collaboration and partnership, and capacity building. So it goes without saying, ohu taio is focused on the protection enhancement of our taio, but similar to Auntie Nessie in the previous presentation, we understand that we can't do it on our own. And to be successful or to have greater success, we need to collaborate, not just with stakeholders such as the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, but our neighbouring hapu, our neighbouring iwi, who are doing similar type of work. And sometimes we do it in isolation without knowing what the other's doing. So we are in the process of developing those connections. And we understand how important that is for greater success.
Kia ora tātou. A mātou kawa, our ohu taio. First I've got to say apologies for my glasses because I broke my clear ones and these are my prescriptions and these are the only other pair that I have. So anyway, a mātou kawa, and this is these are the, I suppose, documents that we as an ohu utilise in responding to those exercising function under the RMA. And obviously Te Tiriti, I don't think I need to expand on that. I think everyone here is aware of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. I got to say that one of my tupunas signed the Māori version way back in the day. So we've been here since. Our settlement agreement in 2013, sadly, it omitted to have I suppose a legitimate link to regional council and our 2 local councils, Tauranga City and Western Bay. So today is one of the reasons we're here, to encourage and strengthen the relationship that was omitted by our settlement. Te Tāhuna Rangatawa Marine and Coastal Area title, we have a MECA that is currently in the plan. Rangatawa Harbour is as a partner with our Rangatawa, Te Tāhuna Rangatawa Whānau, which is a collective of hapu around the Rangatawa Harbour. And our Rangatawa Harbour is registered as a wāhi tapu. So we are now developing that in terms of the strategic plan, Rangatawa Management Strategic Plan, to be instrumental in the MECA management. Ngāti Pukenga Strategic Plan, which is the slide that you just recently saw on the previous slide. Our iwi management plan hasn't been reviewed for 2013. We currently have an application with you to review it. It does not take into consideration the current reforms going through government and subsequently through local government, and it does not also take into consideration our Te Mano Tamai statement, which is a statement that I authored last year. which needs to start implementing some of the strategies highlighted in that Te Mana o Tuai statement. So our iwi management plan is currently being, has an application with you right now to be reviewed to become consistent with our MACA and all those other reforms that are taking place. Our rangatawa management plan, well, that's been in place since the early 2000s, in fact, the late 1990s. And I'll tell you what informs us the motivation around our rangatawa management plan. I grew up around the whole Rangatawa Harbour, so any marae or hapu that I could go to, I can actually get up and speak like this. And so the Rangatawa management plan is the focal point for my involvement with our ohu. And just like the Matakana, the Pātaki, I total call 100% our previous presenters, because yes, we all have a Pātaki. And our Rangatawa management plan has been in place for a long time. We helped initiate the Waitau Catchment Care Group, so I totally support the integration of all community groups that advocate for the health and wealth of our taiao and integration. We have a new catchment care group just starting to establish their foundations now, which is Ngāpeke Catchment Group. They've only entered their 4th meeting now on how to establish themselves, but it all is running consistent with what our rangatawa management plan has. So it's been in development since 2002. Our Waitau Restoration Project, in conjunction with NIWA and New Zealand Land Care Trust, ran for 15 years. So we realised the value of mātauranga Māori and scientific integration in terms of preparing reports for those exercising functions on the OMA on our behalf as an iwi, as a hapu, and around the Rangatawa Harbour. So yes, we're now into drafting an iwi taiao management plan. We've had a meeting, our last iwi management plan also had some social outputs identified in there, but our role as a ohu taiao is specifically for our iwi taiao, is specifically for our taiao, and integrating our kaua into those recognition of those other documents. And just as a just to answer your question, Councillor number 3, I can't see your name, but you asked a question, no, the lady next to you, yeah, you asked a question earlier to our whananga, my matakana nisi ma, and you asked, how do we actually see you, this council now, integrating or helping us out into the future? Well, the fact is, with all of the reforms and the RSP threatening to take out any reference to Te Tiriti, our relationship with you is now required stronger than ever. And that's how we see being here today. We're here to enhance and strengthen that, because once our, I guess, the Resource Management Act has been the thing that has triggered our relationship to start with, and it's so important. And then with that gone, our relationship with you as a regional council has become even more required than it was before. So that's why I see us being, how important our partnership is, and that fact that we're actually going to be proposing to organise a mana whakahono agreement with you guys for that reason, and our other 2 councils. So yes, koina, that's our kaua. And am I on the slide too? Yep. Okay, iwi management plan. Okay, so we like to thank the council for, and the your awesome staff, I must say. We can't do this mahi without them, because they actually view the value of our input to the resource management planning and taiao space before you do. they actually get our they actually get our applications, and I've got to say thank you because they're really valued from our part as well. So we've already had a wānanga taiao, which was funded by you, and the pānui, actually it's the first pukinga taiao wānanga that's been had ever. So that was great, and the output was really good. So you have the pānui, the report at your fingertips from that. We've noted that our review of our iwi management plan is in application now. We're in the throes, or we have a collection of available information to update that. Our draft plan has been shared with our iwi members and friends, but obviously we're going to keep carrying on. And yeah, so that's our process for our iwi management plan, and hopefully we've finished that by the end of the year. Our Te Mana o Te Wai statement, now that was really integral. It's actually got me back into the space when I was approached to write it for Ngāti Pukenga iwi. So yes, and it is when I first started writing it, it was under the auspice of the Three Waters regime, I suppose, reform. So it changed 3 times while I was writing it. And I've got to state now, that no matter what type of reform, even right down to the water down well proposal out there now, we cannot, as an iwi or a hapu, move from the stance that we started writing it in. So I've got to say, I totally support the hierarchy of obligations, the Te Mana o Te Wai statement and everything else that's in it. I cannot shift my opinion on how we can operate under it in any other form or shape. So I wrote it like it was still under the Three Waters, like we have the Mana o Te Wai. And it is sitting in there next to our 2013 iwi management plan now as we speak. I'd like to think that anybody requesting to utilise to exercise functions, I suppose, through your portal, that they refer to Te Mana o Te Wai statement, and that would be their starting point in terms of coming to the table to, we seek that people come to our table, and that they, like they come to your table and ask us for our input into whatever they're attempting to do. So the Te Mana o Te Wai statement is there. It goes right down to identifying the 2 real major things that of concern to us primarily off the bat. And number 1 is our marae, and it's functioning with being a civil defence for our community. So water, stormwater, powering and a civil defence emergency is a priority for us there. And also it identifies our rangatawa management plan, and you'll soon see the fallout of what that is, as being an issue for us to start implementing strategies, which we already have. So our strategy starts in the mountain and finishes at the sea, just like our Pātiki that our whanaunga has introduced to us today. So integrated catchment management, ours starts at Ottawa and ends in Mawao. Well, out to Te Monawanui Toi. So everything in between is of importance to us. So Ngā Papaka o Rangatawa, I'm not sure if you're aware of who they are. We're, I suppose, a natural grouping of hapu and iwi around the Rangatawa Harbour. So that includes Ngāti He, Ngā Pōtiki, Ngāi Tūkarangi, and sitting at our table also our whānau at Hairuini and Ngaitahi, and of course Ngāti Pūkenga. So that strategy back in the early 2000s was collectively developed by kaitaki of that time in the early 2000s. And yes, our primary focus there has been the wastewater ponds, and then leading out to the port and whatever triggers those two things. We also have the imposition of the Tauranga Recycle Centre and dump. So there's some major resource consents going on in our little corner of the world as well. So obviously our plan is long and enduring. So just as I said there, our current focus is duplicating our Waitau restoration project to include our entire catchment, which is the Rangatawa catchment. Our next part of the duplication is the Ngāpeke catchment, building our training capacity in that, and also our infrastructure in respect to our marae and the civil defence. And I see that Buddy is moving that along quite nicely in both councils, as well as us being here today to try and help us with that as an emergency management hub. Okay, this one we're going to leave to Money. Kia ora tātou.
Yeah, so you probably can't read any of that, neither can I. But it is in your papers, and this really came out of the Wānanga Taiao in April. So as Sam said, volunteers from the whānau stepping up to take responsibility for different aspects of the Taiao and our responsibility as kaitiaki. And so, yeah, we've broken up into our little rōpū that are each developing our own plans around those particular areas, and setting some targets for ourselves. And you'll see the tahuna is in there, and I'm just sort of picking up on a couple of points from the previous presentations, some questions around where the manu resided prior to the reclamation of Sulphur Point. If you look back 100 years, there's some photos that very clearly show the sand spit was there, and the birds were able to nest. As others said, there was kai available there. And the question of the Panepane Point, that was, in terms, is it a cyclical thing? Again, if you look back 100 years and you look at the photos, the aerial photos through, that hasn't moved until the last 10 years when dredging was permitted, 2013. And since 2015, it's really disappeared in that period. So there's fairly good correlation with that. I don't think sea level has risen that much in that period to be blamed for all of that. So that's, the kind of issues. And as Nui was saying, our interests aren't just at Rangataua, but everything that happens in the harbour, what happens up that end will affect what happens down this end and vice versa. So that's how we're organising ourselves, and I hope to report back to you, and thank you for the support for that wānanga, for co-funding it with some of our other iwi funds, and brought the whānau together to traverse the whenua and into the harbour as well. So it was really nice for the whānau to connect with the areas that we're responsible for and think about and look, and really scratching the surface. So now we're looking in more depth as we go forward in each of those particular areas of concern and what we can do, pest plants and animal pests, and building maps around the thing, looking at kai production and some commercial opportunities within the ngahere and those taonga that we have responsibilities and rights for. So yeah, again, just those recent activities, there was the wānanga you supported. We've also been talking to staff in the council about the GIS platform development. That's really important for us, from everything from heritage sites through to environmental monitoring, and looking at how we can integrate our own information with that's held by the different councils and private entities. And we've touched on those others. Been connected a bit to the Ko Waimātou project that's also council supported, and been getting regular updates from staff on the regulatory reforms and how that might impact our relationship with you guys and other statutory bodies, and what we can do to articulate our interests there, and encourage council to speak up when you can. You know, I don't think it's good enough just to say good luck and yeah, hope it goes well. You've got an opportunity to influence central government and with your local government colleagues, push back on some of those suggestions, and there's opportunities still to do that. And then, yeah, the geothermal work that's being done as well is of interest to us, and council staff have been really responsive in helping us to build a profile for our particular rohi Ngāpeke in terms of the geothermal resources that sit under that part of the region. Someone else can talk about the other opportunities. Let's go see.
So as we spoke before, we understand and recognise that collaboration is an important part of this process. Without it, we aren't going to achieve the sort of success that we hope to achieve. So within that, we are looking to build relationships with our, like I said, neighbouring iwi, and also the Waitao Land Care Group. We've established a connection with them, and continuing or building on a relationship with the Otane Wainuku Kiwi Trust. All sorts of private, iwi, hapu, council partnerships and collaborations that we're looking to either establish or strengthen. So across the board, we recognise that. And we've heard about the civil defence opportunities, and that's a really important resource, I think, for that area in Ngāpeke, in Welcome Bay. There's nothing like it, I don't think, anywhere in that region. So for that to be a civil defence emergency hub is really important, and should any event mean that we need to use that. But to do that, we do need to upgrade a lot of our facilities around the marae and things like that. So that includes things like the driveway being resilient in terms of power, so solar panels and water, and there might be certainly some things that we're looking at upgrading in collaboration with the regional council.
Probably the training and integrating into the official system as well, sort of connecting with staff and the neighbours and whatnot, so that we understand our role. Having lived through Gabrielle on the East Coast, there's, you know, if people aren't clear before the emergency, it can create even worse situations during and after the emergency. So we need to be part of this conversation. You can read the rest of, yeah, it's sort of up there, but there the mana whakahono arohe arrangements are something that our chief executive will be bringing to your chief executive in the not too distant future. And yeah, certainly that you've been part of those ongoing conversations with the other iwi of the moana and the port board. We had a good meeting a couple of weeks ago, and look forward to progressing that relationship to achieve win-win-win outcomes for everybody, including nature that doesn't get to have a seat around the table and a voice, and that's your fella's job. And you've got some of your own conflicts of interest there, as you raised, being both shareholders and regulators, that you need to not shy away from, but manage carefully, because you do have significant influence over those commercial decisions, and you need to exercise that influence to be responsible members of our elected members of our community. Ātai, questions?
Oh, kia ora koutou, thanks very much. And I lived right next to Whetu Marae for 13 years, so it's close to my heart around there. But My question was around that you had on your slide the Jobs for Nature, and with the Jobs for Nature funding drying up, how big a gap does that leave for your iwi members?
Well, actually, it's not a gap for us because we actually have never utilised it. But in terms of our relationship with our Waitaha neighbours, they are currently they have been utilising it in terms of their bush management strategy in our neighbouring, their part of our maunga Ottawa. So they have been have a fabulous, that we want to actually copy, cut and paste strategy going on in there. And we are sharing our knowledge in that space. And if we can support them, then they can support us to template the program they have running up there. So, you know, Jobs for Nature, if we can help collectively support that continues. Looks as if it's not going to be much, there's nothing in the budget there, but something similar or like-minded would be great.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, Sam, ka pai tō mihi tō kōrero. Sam and I were on Te Reo Māori course together a couple of years ago, but Sam's like, sure, and I'm still here. So yeah, kia ora.
I just want to thank you for the mahi you've done. What we're starting to notice now, I guess, is the sophistication of presentation and mahi being done, which is great for us around the table. I mean, even you know, coming back into, you would have recognised from what it was like 30 years ago to where whānau and hapu have got a lot more sophisticated in structures, looking at governance structures, management and operations. It's brilliant. Notwithstanding, there is still a lot of work to be done, especially around capacity. And it was something that we recognised as a council this time around. And so this morning we made the decision for the funding support that came through LTP for those that have participated in the LTP process and were successful in that. Unfortunately, we were not able to fund everybody that applied, but ongoing support will be given to them as to how I guess in the next tranche of funding, there's a possibility that they would be more successful. So once again, thank you for that, because I guess it gives validity to what we try to achieve as Toi Moana and where we should be supporting you and what you're doing. Also, I guess what we would be looking for now is the work that they achieve within this LTP process and how then we look at moving forward in that space around that whole area of capacity. So we will be looking for the same with you as well in the development of your hapu management plan, the outcomes that you're seeking to achieve via those processes. And all I want to say is come back and let us know, keep us informed of what's happening then, because it also informs the decisions we make here around how we can help you in that space. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi kia koutou. Well, councillors, we're definitely on the home straight, but I've gone over the 2 hours where I didn't give you a break, so I need your consent or we've got one more report, which is the chair's report and our minutes, or we can take a break and come back and do that. I'm at the mercy of your hands. Have a break or go or finish off the last report and move our minutes and then end. Finish it off. All right. Are you good now, Andrew? All right. Thank you. Okay then. Well, we'll move to our minutes, which are on page. What page are they? They start on page 9. Page 9. I'm going to take the minutes as read. And if I can have a mover and a seconder, in that motion that they're through in correct record. Councillor McMillan, thank you. Seconder, thank you. Councillor Crosby. Are there any, has anybody got any changes before I carry the motion? Anybody have any? No. All right. All those in favour say aye. Motion is carried. Thank you. Chair's report. Going to move to Kat to give us the update on the Chair's report, because I understand you've got Ngā Mota is here too. Kia koe, Kat.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ngā Muta's going to give a couple, she's got 2-3 slides with support from Ella, just a quick update on the reforms. Kia ora.
Koutou, through the Chair and Council. Just a quick update, we've been asked to talk to National Direction. So just a reminder, we are preparing for, staff are currently reviewing the National Direction, which was released recently, to bring it to the 18th of June workshop, Strategy and Policy Committee workshop. We will be providing an overview of the National Direction, be able to talk through implications, as well as seek your feedback on submission points. But just to quickly touch on National Direction and the particular components in relation to implications for Māori. Shari, I'll just give you the nod. You recall the National Direction packages as part of a broader reform and broader reform changes. So next one, Shari, in terms of more specifically the National Direction and what's been released. So we've had 16 pieces of National Direction released, 4 are new, 12 updating current. They've been compiled into 4 key packages. We're still waiting on the housing package to be released. The first package is infrastructure and development. The second package is primary sector, and the third package is freshwater. And in terms of impacts for and implications for Māori, you would have heard the presenters earlier today. Freshwater and Te Mana o Te Wai and the changes being proposed to Te Mana o Te Wai, I think, are probably the key, will have the key implications for Māori out of all of the pieces of National Direction. And we heard earlier today the importance of that, and that they are proposing to change. National Direction, of course, is being driven by central government's focus on economic development, growth, housing, looking for more efficient and streamlined processes. So I think that's probably where it will touch down the most in my perspective. And certainly we see that coming through in the wording that was used in the documentation in terms of all options will weaken the overall influence of the Te Mana o Te Wai framework and freshwater management as a concept. And so that's the wording that's been used in the documents. Further, in terms of the regulatory impact statement in relation to several options that are proposed with the removal of the Te Mana o Te Wai framework, they do note in the regulatory impact statement that these were elements considered to progress Crown's assurances recorded in the Supreme Court process in relation to Māori rights and interests. So this is, there is a lot in that space. Ella, did you want to talk to any of the other points before I go on?
I'll just briefly, there's a lot more enabling kind of provisions in the NPS for infrastructure and also for renewable energy generation. And so, and it would be affecting how consents perhaps are dealt with in the future if that was to go through. There is a great NES for papakainga to make that permitted for relatively small scale, I think up to 10, which is great. That'll be in the district council space rather than the regional consenting. And yeah, that's probably the main ones. Yeah.
So that was pretty much a high-level overview in terms of implications for Māori of the National Direction. As I've said, staff are still working through the documentation, so we'll be in a much better position this time next week. We were also asked to touch on the regulatory standards bill. So through the chair, if you want me to continue, or yeah. So this came up at the Rangataiki River Forum as well. Clearly, there's a key component in your operating environment paper here. which just notes that the Regulatory Standards Bill is open for consultation. Submissions close on the 23rd of June. As I noted, the Rangataiki River Forum staff are supporting their Te Uru Kahika, which is the regional sector submission. And as you know, that involves the 16 regional councils and unitary authorities throughout New Zealand. So that combined voice often becomes much stronger when it's together. We aren't planning on drafting a submission as the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and that is primarily due to staff capacity. I'm sure you're all aware in terms of the Regulatory Standards Bill that the bill proposes a set of principles for lawmakers and agencies around the rule of law, personal liberties, property rights, taxes, fees, levies, and the role of courts. Happy to take any questions.
Toy, I can see your hand up, Toy. Sorry, I was looking for the electronic hand. Kai a koe.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Can you hear me?
You've lost, yeah, now we can. We lost you momentarily there.
Ka pai. Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Namuta and Ella. Madam Chair, I am concerned that we're not submitting individually. I do appreciate that the Te Uru Kahika has put forward a submission in the last round before the second reading. And I've gone back over that submission, and it's really substantial. And the reason why I'm concerned that we're not putting in a submission is that, yes, from a high level, this affects the 16 regional councils that did put forward a submission. That are part of Te Uru Kahika and part of that submission. But this bill, with its complete ignorance of the treaty aside, is going to be incredibly impactful on our ratepayers. And I don't think that our ratepayers deserve us to be silent on it. And I'm not saying we're completely silent, because of course we are part of the Te Uru Kahika submission, but in terms of our localized on the ground impacts for the Bay of Plenty, I believe that for a bill that has potentially the potential impact of probably any other reform that we've seen come through, I think our ratepayers really deserve to hear from us, and that if we're silent on it, that actually says a lot, let alone when it comes to our iwi partners, who I think will all be looking to us to be making a submission, to be hearing from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council on how we view this bill will be impacting our partnerships, having the opportunity to state who our partners are. And we are a regional council, apart from all other regional councils with regards to how many partnerships we have, but also with regards to just the environmental mahi that we do. Our Plain Change 10 in Rotorua, and the potential for us having to pay compensation if our regulations impact the ability for a landowner to make profit, or to do what they want to do with their land. It's that balance between the public good and the individual rights. But Madam Chair, we're not talking about the individual rights of our average working class, middle class families. We're talking about the property rights of large property owners who have the resources and the intent to test this legislation. And this also, Madam Chair, is not legislation that is isolated to just New Zealand. And I think our ratepayers deserve to hear from us some contextualization around from where this type of policy is coming from. And there is a global context to it. You know, we are seeing globally concentrations of wealth, and that wealth is bankrolling the think tanks that is rolling out these kinds of policies globally. We've seen it in Australia, we've seen it in America. So there is a context there as well. I'm not saying that and if we did do a submission that we would necessarily go into that, but I think as a board of elected representatives, our ratepayers would expect us to communicate to them the very real risks that they will have to pay for. The potential litigation, let alone if the litigation is successful on the part of the litigators and we have to pay out compensation for regulation that we put into place, or we have to cut back on services, or we cannot provide the kinds of environmental protections that our ratepayers expect from us. I think they deserve to hear from us about that. As the Bay of Plenty Regional Council went through the Te Uru Kahika submission, they said that other councils who are part of the submission may be submitting to present their localized story. I do, Namuta, take through your chair heed of your words that staff are pressed. I'm not necessarily talking about a completely rethinking of it, of what is in Te Uru Kahika. I think a lot of the technical work's been done there. But I think putting in some very localized examples, I think noting our iwi partnerships, I think going through and personalizing it for the Bay of Plenty isn't a huge task to ask. So, Madam Chair, I'd actually like the motion that we do submit from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and that we utilize the S&P workshop on the 18th of June to work out what it is that we do submit. Again, I'm not talking about a complete rework. I'm talking about personalizing this for the Bay of Plenty, because I believe our ratepayers deserve for us to do that. Kia ora, Madam Chair.
Kia ora. We'll just wait a second. We're just seeking some advice from our senior staff members. I guess just my view on what you've just said, Toy, and I guess too, it reminded me of what Manu just said to us in our presentation, and that was for regional council to speak up when you can. And now, what you're giving in your korero, because yes, we have presented with Te Kahika, Te Uru Kahika, which is the collective voice of regional councils. But now you raise the question about the localised voice of the Bay of Plenty region of Toi Moana. And I get that. I guess it is just another discussion. I'm just going to turn to Kat now and just get some advice that staff have given us. I think before I take the advice from Kat, I think I'm going to open it up to the other councillors who may have a view, because the other view I have is that I do know we have a workshop on the 18th, and whether we can discuss that more fully in the workshop and whether we are able to make a decision at that point. But I'm going to open it up to the other councillors to be able to have their expressions as well. But you've got your hand up again.
Oh yeah, just
Toy, before I move on.
Yeah, kia ora, Mate Moana, just to be clear that I have put a motion so that we do make the submission, and that we utilise the S&P workshop to work out what that submission is. I may not get a seconder and it may fail, but that is on the floor. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I'd just like some clarification. Who made the decision not to submit to the regulatory standards bill? Was it council? Because I don't think we can overturn that if it was. And also there's so few of us here today, I would feel quite uncomfortable for Komiti Māori making a decision on behalf of council. No, that's my opinion as well. But if you could please clarify, who was it that decided not to put in the submission?
So the regulatory standards bill was consulted on across that sort of December, January period. And because submissions closed on the 13th of January, there just wasn't the opportunity to get a council position on the regulatory standards bill. So given we didn't have a council position on that, staff didn't feel that we could submit on that. So that's why our staff contributed. As we do, we work with other councils to contribute thinking to the Te Uru Kahika submission, which was a staff submission. So that's where that was.
Madam Chair, whatever the process is from here, do we or do we not? I second the motion that Councillor Iti has put forward. I tautoko exactly what he's saying, but whatever the process is from here is obviously a matter for us to agree upon. I'm uncertain myself, but I tautoko and second his motion.
Oh, sorry. I'll allow councillors to speak and then we'll move back to the motion that's been put.
Mina? Yeah, I tautoko what Councillor White is saying. I don't know the process either. And obviously, Councillor Neves has got a point that not all the councillors are here today. So whatever is the most appropriate process, but I do support the motion because of all the reasons Councillor Iti has said. There is so much about this regulatory standards bill that that so much of this country is appalled by. So I think we do have a duty of responsibility to point out in our submission the impacts to our communities and to the work of Toi Moana and environmental protection, rights of Māori, all of those things. So I think I actually feel we would be negligent if we didn't point out those local, those Bay of Plenty regional impacts. And I also want to say that the Te Uru Kahika submission is fantastic, and it's great that we have supported the development of that submission. And that's great to have that collective of 16 unitaries and regionals together with that voice. And I think when you read that submission, it's pretty clear that the impacts are great for our region and for Aotearoa. So yeah, so that's all I'll say for now, and whatever the correct process is so that everybody has a voice and we follow the right procedure. But that's kind of my opinion on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. My recollection of this debate was there was informal discussion with councillors that led to the decision that we would support Te Uru Kahika submission. I distinctly remember Fiona sitting up there at the top table next to me, canvassing with councillors what that position was, but there was no formal resolution. I think, Chair, if there is to be a formal resolution from this here, we need to be clear of what the resolution says, because I don't know whether Committee Māori can make a recommendation to the Strategy and Policy Committee as opposed to making it to full council, who then asks for some description about what's in the Regulatory Standards Bill. Because as Councillor Iti said, he's referring to parts of that bill that may have impact on the activities we do, but that bill is much more comprehensive than just dealing with land-based, the TIO issues that we deal with. So I think firstly, councillors need the ability to have a presentation on what's contained within that bill before you can make an informed decision, and that decision would have to be taken at a council meeting. What date are we working to, Ngāmuta, in terms of final submissions?
So
We've got a council meeting on the 24th.
there is a council meeting on the 24th. And there's a Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 18th.
Next week.
I do note timing is tricky because the submissions close on the 23rd of June.
Through you, Madam Chair, just some information that might be useful or not is that in the Komiti Māori terms of reference, it does say that they can make submissions on Māori related matters in conjunction with other council committees where appropriate. Not sure if that's helpful or not.
Madam Chair, if I may, if we've already decided and agreed that we were supportive of the Tūru Kāhika submission, I am unsure if, and the submission was very clear that it does not support the progression of the bill. So we've already taken that stance as a council. If we think through it reasonably, as a council, we have already taken the stance that we do not support the progression of the bill. I think adding a localized story to that, just to take what's already been done by Tūru Kāhika and putting our own localized story on that, is not a high bar to jump over with regards to, I guess, getting all of the councillors on board, because I see it largely as quite procedural. We're not reinventing the wheel. We've already agreed that we're not supporting the bill. All we're doing is adding our localized story to, if we've already made that decision, I don't really see what the huge problem is.
Other than that, we haven't got the wider council members here. And I just don't feel with 7 of us.
There's 10.
We've got 10, we've got them online as well.
Oh, okay. Well then, I won't talk anymore then.
Madam Chair, I just don't quite understand what the difficulty is in adding a localised story. It's just.
Well, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go through the process. And the process is a motion has been made, a seconder has been made, and now we take the vote as to support. Before I do that, Councillor Cosby.
Yeah, once again, we find ourselves in a difficult position because of timeframes and things like that. I do support what Councillor Iti is suggesting. I do appreciate it will require a little bit more work, but if you look at all the information this council holds, it's a matter of someone tying it together to create that draft for us to take a look at. I don't think it's a lot of new work. It's a case of putting the pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. The bill itself is classic libertarian stuff. When you dig deep down to it. And there are huge risks to progressing, what this council does. for the benefit of the community and the environment. So I think it does require us to take some time and effort to go through the legislative process, and what pops out the end, pops out the end. But, you know, if you look at the principles of it, in brief, it is classic coalition contradiction. On one hand, one part of the government wants us to grow the economy and do all these wonderful things, which is great. I don't think anyone supports that. But with that are trade-offs to a whole lot of other things, which is reality. And yet some of the principles of this bill will potentially block, actually, the growth and development of the country under the guise of, oh, you know, you can do what you like type things, or don't put barriers in the way. Because society is based on order, or a hierarchy of order. And in the libertarian view, you take all that away and what will happen will happen. It never ends well, you know. Thousands and thousands of years of human history have shown it doesn't end particularly well if you take a structure and order away. And so without getting my personal view into it, I think this council does need to look at it from its own lens. It shouldn't, dare I say it, be a huge exercise. I don't think we should worry about detail. I think we should probably do 3 or 4 examples of how this bill could stop us doing our work for the community and for the environment, based on, you know, Te Ura Kahika's excellent submission as well. So I'd support it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move back. The motion has been put. It's been seconded. And so I'm going to take it to a vote of those first in favour of, oh, sorry.
So, Madam Chair, just around the wording, because my motion is that we do make a submission and that we work out the details at the S&P workshop.
Can you see the recommendation, Toy?
Yeah.
Okay, are you happy with that recommendation?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, and that's Tataru has seconded that. Okay, I just need, we'll probably have a show of hands. All those in favour? I think I can wait. I can't see yours, Malcolm. Malcolm, do you know what we're voting on?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just having a bit of technical detail here. I'm going into. So
Okay.
I'll do it this way. How's that? I'll give you my hand. How's that?
Okay. Is there anybody else on Zoom that? Councillor Winters, are you there? Maybe not now. Councillor Thurston, are you still there? Both gone? Okay, both gone. Oh dear, what do we do then? We just cancel one. All right, so how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those against will be, okay, that's 6-3. So the motion is successful.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is that that has brought the our meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Chair, there's another issue in your Chair's report that I wanted to raise.
Oh, sorry.
Do with the suggestion. Whoops, I've lost my place. A suggestion about
What page, Councillor?
I'm just trying to find it.
Oh.
I've lost. Can't find it, but it's about the mana whakahono arrangements over the next few months.
Page 21.
Oh, thank you. It's way off it. So the suggestion, if I understand it, is that staff undertake what would normally be something that would come to the council. But I don't really understand the rationale, because if it seems to be that because it's in that funny period.
We'll just get Hedwyn up to the table. Hedwyn, did you hear the concern raised?
Through you, Madam Chair. So it's at page 21 of your agenda. There's an update on the mana whakahono. As councillors will be aware, it's a statutory process, and notwithstanding the elections, the mana whakahono process keeps ticking over and over. With the upcoming reforms as well, there's a big demand or an interest from iwi to finalise those mana whakahono arrangements. But leading into there's again the difficulties with this election cycle that we're heading into. So rather than what we've tried to do, and in conjunction with the leadership team, is come to an interim kind of arrangement, a placeholder that allows us to meet that threshold to agree those arrangements, but to placehold on significant matters. As councillors may recall, there are some compulsory elements which we have to include in a mana whakahono. Those are around planning and policy provisions. And then there are the bigger, more discretionary items. Way back when this first came out, the discretionary items was the big area of uncertainty, because that opens the door for conversation between council and iwi around a whole lot of other things. We are not proposing to entertain those. We are proposing to park those and focus just on those core elements, which is in that policy planning space. There, as part of the core elements, the monitoring and operations space does come into that. Councillors will be aware there's some uncertainty around where that's going to land with the proposed reforms. So again, we've sought to placehold language around that with a view to returning to it post-October once that bill around tranche 3 is introduced and we've got more clarity around what will happen in that space. So it's essentially an interim arrangement to enable us to carry over and during this period of uncertainty, if that answers the question.
Yeah, I suppose my confusion is that if the decisions are not major, then it doesn't come under any regulations about what we can do in the 3 months or not, because it's not major decisions, and therefore I wouldn't expect there to be any change in the process we'd normally have. If they are major, then of course they should be delayed in any case. So I don't understand the rationale. It doesn't seem to make sense to me, the rationale for having a change in the process.
I guess it's through you, sorry, Madam Chair, we want to carry on. It's largely just signalling that is what the process will be, that we are certainly going to be placeholding those bigger decisions, so that's that discretionary space, and to provide that comfort that what the focus is on is those operational level matters, things which we would otherwise have done, which are otherwise operational matters. If that makes, I don't know whether I'm answering the question there for you.
So I suppose my question is, would those normal, what you're calling operational matters, normally come to council?
The existing process we have at the moment is for the entirety of that mana whakahono to be brought to council, but that was on the basis of this comprehensive agreement having been developed that looked at both those operational kind of things, but also those discretionary things that iwi may seek to raise. So we will still be focusing on those operational components, and we're confident that there isn't a significant risk, or it's not of a significant nature that it should be elevated to a council level decision. So we could proceed with those, is what we're kind of indicating.
I'd suggest that it still comes to council to have that oversight, because it'll be part of it will in any case be part of a bigger agreement, and to have something which causes a headache at a later stage might be awkward for the organisation. And some of the things mentioned in there as being operational might not be as operational as it sounds when we're talking about the way that the two parties participate in consultation. It's in those sections that you mentioned. So I'm nervous about not having any oversight at all in that period.
I just want to give you my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong. The interim process that you're talking about is occurring because we have elections coming up, and you are currently already in discussions with iwi who want to go down the track of te mana whakahono. And without having to put those on hold and to maintain the momentum, thank you, of those discussions, that's why you're raising to basically carry on in the interim until such time we are able to formalise mana whakahono. Is that my understanding?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
So I guess my view to the councillor is asking the councillor, did you understand that explanation? It's about maintaining the momentum of what is being discussed with the iwi that are looking at developing the mana whakahono without placing them in a holding tank, which will be for how long? That could be up to 5 to 6 months is my take, or is it shorter than that?
It would be a period of some time because it would be
Yeah,
after the election, and then councils would get to a position to be able to revisit decisions on mana whakahono and stuff like that. So it would be some time into the new year at the earliest, I would expect. The problem with that is we also have the bill, the new reforms being.
So I'm going to say 6 months, given how long it took us with MIF and the process that we have to follow internally. So I would say 6 months. And so I'm totally understand where you're coming from. I guess what we have to, though, is that we have to have that level of understanding around the table. And I guess I come back to you around what my understanding was, and does that help you to understand why the report is saying what it's saying and asking?
I guess it doesn't. In my head, it doesn't address the problem that it says it's trying to achieve, which is to address the uncertainties, because the uncertainties are external to this organisation. They're about changes in laws, and there are some things which we might ordinarily describe as operational, which, yeah, sure, it's going to be something that's the way the forms are submitted and so on. But there are some other things which I'm nervous about being agreed to, which we won't have the capacity to agree to, or that we indicate an agreement to, which will be either taken out of our hands or might be a different agreement when the full whakahono is put in place. And I wouldn't want us to set ourselves up for failure, or to imply agreement with something which then we look as if we are reneging on.
I think what we have to understand, though, councillor, is that we're not signing off the mana whakahono. This is part of the development process. So we're not signing anything off until it'll be post-election, when the new council comes back in, and whether or not they have finished that draft, which I probably doubt they will be. So the decision making will still be from this table. What staff are looking for is the continuation in the development of the mana whakahono, which we all know has been a very long process for hapu and iwi. What won't happen is any sign-off around what's being proposed to go into that until such time the new council is back at the table and we have been informed of that process being taken between Toi Moana via staff and the hapu iwi.
Paper it says more than just about continuing the process. It says we actually enter into agreements. And that's the thing that
I'm going to let
is a step higher.
Well, I'll let Herewini or Kat respond to that. And when we say agreement, what does that actually mean?
I can see there's some councillor hands up, so I'll just let the councillor speak first, and then I might just talk about the discussion we had at leadership team and the advice we got from our chief executive.
So yes, I'm in the same position as Councillor Scott, in that it says, and for the chief executive to sign off on provisions that are essentially operational matters, but there's still going to be sign off without reference to council. I don't know what it means when it says essentially operational matters. It could be anything that we do as council. So I think we need clarification before we can make a decision one way or another.
Well, your hand is up and before Kat responds.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem is. If staff are saying it's operational, then I think we have faith that and trust that it is operational, and that has really nothing to do with our high level role in this. If it is not operational, and we find later on that it's actually got to do with policy setting or strategy setting or the other work that we do, then that would be quite an issue. So I think our staff are professional enough to be able to decide what is operational and what is governance. We place that faith in them every single day as they go about their work. So I'm unsure why that would be an issue, Madam Chair. Because I would have an expectation that if staff saw a line and they said, oh no, this steps over that line and it steps outside of the operational line, that they would bring it to this forum, to Komiti Māori, to discuss further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Iti. Thank you, councillors, for your questions. So this matter was taken to the leadership team, and hence it's a information item on the advice of our chief executive, because she was very clear at our leadership team meeting that it was only operational matters. And for example, consultation on planning or resource consents like we do in our BAU. That's the type of operational. Anything outside that scope, we've draw a line in the sand. It is only, and it might be 2 or 3 bullet points. I mean, we envisage that they will be very short. And we did show the chief executive the types of things that are operational, and she was very comfortable with this interim process.
Then just a clarification, the chief executive will only sign off a provision within the Te Mana Whakahono agreement that is business as usual for us, that we're already doing. So we're not coming up with anything novel or anything that's breaking a precedent. It's just going to be reflecting what we already do.
That's a really good description. Thank you, Councillor Nees. That's exactly what it is. And sorry, we haven't explained that well enough.
Boy, did you hear that? Just clarification around moving the report as well as your motion, you and Te Taru. Are you happy to move the, right, okay. Okay, so of that report, Councillor White moving, Councillor Iti seconding. All those in favour say aye. Any questions? No. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of our meeting. Thank you. And, oh, aroha mai. Te Taru. Karakia.
Madam Chair, ke tau ka tātou katoa te ata whaia tō tātou ariki ai kreiti. Me te aroha te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake. Amen.
Amen. And our next meeting will be, what's the date, Kat? On the 28th of August in Rotorua.